I swear on every overpriced candle in my penthouse, I wasn't always the type of woman who bites back. But disrespect? Yeah, that'll flip a switch in me real quick. Especially when it comes from the very people who only remember my existence when they need money wired or a vacation home booked for them. So when my niece, my own brother's daughter, looked straight at me during our family's stupid little pre-holiday brunch and said, "Aunt Mania, you're basically like nobody." And my entire family laughed like she just won a comedy award. I didn't react the way they expected. I didn't storm off, I didn't snap, I didn't throw a mimosa in anyone's face, though God knows I should have. No, I just sat there with my Prada sunglasses pushed up on my head, staring at every single one of their smug faces, letting the moment burn into my memory like a brand, because I knew, deep in my bones, that every disrespectful chuckle around that marble table was going to mean something very, very different in less than 24 hours. But before I get to what happened the next morning, yeah, that part, the meltdown, the sheer panic, I should explain how the hell I even ended up being the nobody in a family I practically bankrolled. See, I'm the youngest sibling, but the first to actually get my life together. Built my company from scratch, hustled through nights surviving on caffeine and spite, while my siblings floated through life like unpaid interns waiting for someone to hand them success. And yet somehow I became the family's emotional punching bag the moment I moved into a high-rise and bought myself a Tesla. My brother, Nate, loves pretending he's the responsible one. Even though he's asked me for money so many times, I could make a bingo card out of it. Car repairs, failed business ideas, emergency vet bills for a dog he doesn't even have anymore, you name it. His wife, Tiffany, is the type who smiles at you like she's trying to sell you essential oils right before she insults you in the same breath. And their daughter, Princess Madison, yeah, her actual nickname, I wish I were joking, is 15 going on full demon, raised on TikTok audacity and her mother's belief that consequences are emotionally restrictive. So when she called me a nobody, I honestly shouldn't have been shocked. But the way everyone laughed, that hit different. My mom hid her face behind a napkin like she didn't want to be seen laughing. My dad chuckled and mumbled something about kids these days. My sister Lexi actually snorted. And Nate, he smirked like he'd been waiting for someone to finally knock me down a peg. But here's the thing. While my family thinks I'm some overly sensitive single aunt with too much money and no real life, what they don't know is that I had already been sitting on information that could shatter the little perfect family image they used to justify treating me like crap. I had receipts, literal receipts, screenshots, emails, a whole damn folder on secrets so dark they could make a grown man sweat through a winter coat. And ironically, those secrets weren't even things I went looking for. They practically fell into my lap, wrapped in a bow, like fate itself said, "Hey girl, in case you ever want to serve revenge with a side of poetic justice, here you go." But I didn't use them immediately because despite everything, they were still my family. And breaking them would be like breaking pieces of myself. And maybe I still held on to the ridiculous hope that one day they'd treat me like an actual human being instead of the family ATM with a pulse. But the moment Madison said that word, nobody, and the table erupted in laughter, something inside me snapped. Not loud, not dramatic, more like a clean, precise click of a lock turning. I smiled, finished my drink, excused myself early, and went home to my glass-walled sanctuary with its skyline view and the silence that always feels more loyal than they ever have. I poured myself a drink, opened my laptop, and stared at the folder labeled "Just in Case." I didn't open it, not yet, but I left it on my desktop like a loaded gun with the safety off. And I swear Manhattan itself felt like it was holding its breath.
The crazy part? I wasn't even planning to use anything, not until the universe handed me the perfect opportunity on a silver platter the next morning, when I woke up, checked my phone, and saw no less than 36 missed calls from my family group chat, 6 from my mom, 3 from Nate, 1 from frickin' Tiffany, who only calls when she needs something, and an all-caps text from my sister that simply said, "Answer now, it's about Madison." And that was when I knew, oh, I knew, my role as the family nobody had just expired. And trust me, when I found out what happened to Madison, the whole definition of panic took on a brand new level. And somehow I was the only one who could fix it, if I wanted to.
When I finally called my sister back, she answered so fast that the wind from her panic practically came through the phone. She didn't even say hello, just launched into this breathless, high-pitched ramble about how Madison wasn't home, how she'd never come back from the sleepover she told them she was going to, how her phone was off, how her friends didn't know where she was, how Nate and Tiffany were losing their minds, and how the entire family was freaking out because apparently Madison had left a very concerning handwritten note on her vanity, my name written in the corner, like some kind of breadcrumb from hell. My stomach dropped. Not because I was worried about being blamed. I knew that was coming. But something was seriously off. Madison wasn't the type of kid who just vanished. She was spoiled, reckless, yes. Disrespectful, absolutely. But she wasn't quiet, and her entire personality ran on attention. Disappearing wasn't her style, unless she wanted someone to notice. And if she wanted someone specific to notice, yeah, that would have been me. So I told Lexi to slow down, drink water, stop hyperventilating before she passed out and made this a two-person crisis, but she just kept repeating, "Maya, the note had your name on it," like a broken alarm. So I got dressed, grabbed my keys, and headed straight for my brother's suburban mansion, one of those fake luxury houses designed to look rich to people who've never actually seen real wealth, all staged furniture and cheap chandeliers pretending they're crystal. When I walked in, the whole family was there. My parents, Lexi, my brother, Tiffany with mascara streaked down her face like she'd been auditioning for a tragic movie role, and a bunch of neighbors hovering around acting like they were part of a Netflix documentary. The moment I stepped into the foyer, all conversation stopped like someone hit mute. Every pair of eyes swung toward me, heavy with suspicion, fear, and this weird underlayer of expectation, like I'd walked in holding answers in my purse. My brother marched up to me with that puffed-up chest he uses when he wants to feel like the man of the house, and said, "Maya, where is she?" Like Madison was tucked into my coat pocket. I told him to back up and use his actual brain cells, and Tiffany gasped like I'd slapped the Pope. But I wasn't in the mood to babysit their emotions, especially when they were the ones who raised a teenager bold enough to call me a nobody and then leave my name on a cryptic note 12 hours later. Finally, they showed me the note. Lined notebook paper, torn from the edge, messy handwriting, Madison's sparkly pen ink, and at the bottom corner, like an afterthought, or maybe a deliberate message, the tiny scribble, "Ask Aunt Maya." And listen, I might have been furious with the girl yesterday, but this hit me differently. I knew kids rage, especially privileged, overprotected, ego-fed ones, don't write mysterious notes for fun unless they're trying to say something they can't say out loud. So I asked to see her room, and walking into Madison's space was like stepping into the brain of a teenager raised by Instagram. Neon signs, vanity drowning in makeup, clothes everywhere, ring light still on the floor, and the faint smell of expensive body spray. But the thing that caught my eye wasn't the mess. It was her laptop, wide open on the bed, screen turned off but warm, meaning it had been used recently. So while the rest of my family hovered outside like nosy vultures, I opened it, guessed her password in literally one try because rich kids always use something obvious. Hers was her birthday. And once I logged in, the entire situation turned from concerning to a full-blown thriller-level nightmare. There were messages, dozens, from someone saved as J, all from last night, all deleted except what was cached in her notifications. Someone older, someone way too comfortable telling her things like, "Don't tell your parents, we'll figure this out together, and just leave the house when they fall asleep. I'll pick you up." And that's when I froze, not because of what Jay said, but because I recognized the avatar picture. It wasn't some random teenage boy. It wasn't a stranger from school. It wasn't even someone her parents would suspect. It was someone I knew, someone my entire family knew, someone whose secret I had been sitting on for months, tucked safely into my just-in-case folder. The same folder containing proof that this man, this married man, this trusted member of our family circle, had been having conversations and meetups that were absolutely not appropriate for someone in his position. And there it was, his face, half hidden by sunglasses, but unmistakable.
I slammed the laptop shut so hard the sound made my mom flinch. And suddenly every accusing eye in the hallway was on me, but for the first time I didn't care. I wasn't thinking about the disrespect or the brunch or the nobody comment. I was thinking about Madison, about what she might have walked herself into, and about the man who may have lured her there. And the worst part, if I exposed him now, if I blasted the truth, if I dropped the nuclear bomb I'd been holding back, the fallout wouldn't just destroy him, it would destroy the entire family. And maybe that was exactly what needed to happen. Because when I realized who Jay was, I understood something terrifying. Madison hadn't run away. She'd been guided by someone we should have never trusted.
I walked out of Madison's room with my heartbeat thumping in my throat, the kind of pulsing dread that feels like someone pulling piano wires tight inside your chest, because I knew that what I had just seen wasn't some teen drama or runaway cliché. It was deliberate, guided, and the man behind it was someone I'd been silently watching for months, gathering evidence on because I had this gut feeling he wasn't who he pretended to be. And now, because my family refused to see reality unless it slapped them with a subpoena, we were knee-deep in the consequences of everyone calling me dramatic all these years. But the problem was, I couldn't just say his name. Not yet, because dropping that truth bomb in that moment would have sent the whole house into cardiac arrest. And with my family's talent for denial, they'd probably still find a way to make me the villain. So instead, I told them I needed to check something, ignoring the barrage of questions, accusations, and Tiffany dramatically whispering to Nate that I knew something, like she hadn't spent the last decade pretending she was smarter than she actually was. I walked outside into their cold suburban driveway, dialed a number I never thought I'd call again, my ex, Ethan, a cybersecurity consultant with a government-level clearance and an even bigger ego. But he picks up for me every time because we never really ended badly, we just ended at the wrong time. He answered with that smug little half-laugh, "Wow, look who remembered I exist." And normally I'd roast him, but I told him I needed help, and the shift in his tone was instant. I sent him a picture of the cached messages, and within minutes, he'd run a quick trace, confirming the exact nightmare I'd been hoping I was wrong about. The account was connected to a burner number tied to a VPN, yes, but the money that paid for the VPN, the name on the card, the address linked to the recovery email, all of it pointed straight to Jason, my sister Lexi's husband, Mr. I'm a respectable family man with a stable job and a boring golf habit. The same man who smiled at everyone like he was the world's most harmless golden retriever, the same man who'd been cheating on Lexi for months with a woman whose face I could describe perfectly because she was in the screenshots I'd saved. The same man who always treated Madison like she was his actual daughter, which at the time seemed sweet, but now felt predatory as hell. My stomach flipped so violently I had to lean against their stupid decorative stone column just to steady myself. And I wanted to storm into the house and blast his name into the living room air like a grenade. But this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about a girl who might be trapped with a man twice her age who'd clearly been manipulating her. And if I exploded before I had proof of where he took her, I'd only waste time. So I told Ethan to keep digging and hung up just in time to see Jason pull into the driveway like some innocent, clueless husband coming home from brunch. He stepped out of his car with that practiced, calm smile, his designer coat perfectly draped, like he wasn't the center of a nightmare unfolding behind him, and when he saw me, his expression faltered just a little. So small, no one else noticed. But I did, because unlike my family, I actually paid attention. Inside, the chaos restarted. Voices shouting, my parents demanding answers, my brother blaming me for the note, Tiffany sobbing into a throw pillow like she was auditioning for Real Housewives of Delusional County. But Jason stood there pretending to be this composed pillar of reason as he said, "Let's not jump to conclusions. I'm sure Madison is safe." And that's when I saw it, the tiny flicker of fear behind his eyes. Not fear for her, fear of being caught. He knew I knew something, he just didn't know how much, and that gave me leverage. So I played along, acted confused, acted like the nobody aunt they always dismissed, even let him put a hand on my shoulder like he thought he could manipulate me the same way he manipulated everyone else. But inside, a fire was spreading through me, dark and cold and focused, because as long as he thought I didn't suspect him, he'd slip up, and slip-ups leave trails.
And sure enough, when he excused himself to make a work call, I followed him silently down the hall and watched him go into the guest bathroom, locking the door, whispering into his phone with a voice so low he didn't think anyone could hear. But I did. I heard enough. Words like last night and don't say anything and I'll fix this. And my blood ran ice cold. I pulled out my phone, hit record, caught every syllable. Because if Jason thought he could play this like some shadowy secret affair thriller where the clueless wife stays clueless, he picked the wrong family. Because I wasn't clueless, I was prepared. And when he walked out and saw me standing there, he froze. But I smiled sweetly like nothing was wrong because I needed him comfortable, sloppy, unguarded. And right then, Ethan texted me the address Madison's phone pinged last. An old lakeside property owned by Jason's co-worker's cousin, practically abandoned, no cameras, no neighbors. Perfect for someone who wanted to disappear with a teenage girl. I grabbed my coat and keys, and when Lexi asked where I was going, I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "To bring your daughter home." And the silence that followed sent chills through everyone in that room. But I didn't wait for them to catch up, didn't explain, didn't justify. I just walked out, engine roaring as I sped toward the lake house, praying I wasn't too late, and knowing damn well that what I was about to uncover would shatter the entire foundation of my family forever. And trust me, when I opened the door to that lake house, what I saw inside wasn't just shocking. It changed everything I thought I knew about Madison and about the monster who took her.
By the time I reached the lake house, the sky had turned that eerie gray blue that always shows up right before something bad happens, the kind of weather that feels like it's holding its breath. The driveway was covered in dead leaves, the porch light flickering like a dying heartbeat, and the whole property looked like the set of a horror film where everyone in the audience already knows the girl shouldn't go inside. But I wasn't the girl in this story. I was the storm coming for whoever the hell thought they could hurt Madison and walk away alive. I killed my headlights, parked a little off the gravel, grabbed the heavy flashlight I kept in my trunk, and approached the door slowly, listening for anything, voices, crying, footsteps, but the silence was thick and wrong. Still, I pushed the door open, and the moment it creaked, I felt my entire life tilt, because inside the dim living room, illuminated only by the weak glow of a lamp, Madison was sitting on the floor, alive, knees pulled to her chest, mascara streaked, looking like she hadn't slept in years instead of one night. And she wasn't tied up or gagged or locked away like I feared. She was alone, shaking, staring at the wall like someone had hollowed her out emotionally. When she saw me, the relief in her eyes flickered, but it wasn't the grateful kind. It was the terrified, guilty kind, like she didn't know if she wanted help or if she thought she didn't deserve it. I rushed to her, dropped to my knees, grabbed her shoulders gently, and asked her if she was hurt, if Jason touched her, if he threatened her, but she just shook her head, mouth trembling, whispering, "I messed up, Aunt Maya. I messed up so bad," over and over like a broken record. I asked where Jason was, but her silence told me everything. She wasn't protecting herself. She was protecting him, and that made my skin crawl. I scanned the house. Kitchen, empty. Bedroom, empty. Back hallway, empty. But his jacket was on the chair and his keys were still on the table, which meant he hadn't left for long or he didn't plan to get far. When I came back to Madison, she finally cracked, tears spilling as she confessed that she'd been talking to Jason for months, that he'd been nice to her, understood her, listened to her when her parents didn't, that he told her she was special and mature and not like other kids. Classic predator language. And the rage that surged through me was so sharp, I swear I felt it slice me from the inside. She said she came here willingly because Jason told her he needed to talk to her privately, that her parents wouldn't understand and that it would ruin the family if they found out what they'd been discussing. I asked what the hell they had been discussing, and the answer hit me like getting punched in the chest. Madison thought she was pregnant. Not by Jason, thank God, but by some stupid teenage boy she'd been sneaking out to see, and Jason found out before anyone else because she vented to him when she panicked, and instead of telling her to go to her parents or helping her responsibly, he used it to his advantage, manipulating her with guilt and fear to keep her silent. He told her he'd help her fix everything, told her he'd drive her somewhere this morning, told her she didn't need to tell anyone, not even me, and the note she left wasn't a clue, it was her begging for me to somehow figure it out without her saying it directly.
I hugged her, told her she wasn't alone, told her we'd figure everything out, and for the first time since I walked in, she clung to me like she finally believed she wasn't trapped. And that's when the front door slammed. My body reacted before my brain did. I shoved Madison behind me, standing up just as Jason walked in, freezing when he saw me like he just walked into a crime scene with his fingerprints everywhere. His face shifted. Shock, then irritation, then flat-out anger masked behind a thin coating of fake calm, the type of expression only a narcissist could hold. "Maya," he said slowly, "you shouldn't be here. Like this was his house, his rules, his narrative." I told him if he took one more step toward Madison, I'd bury him under the frickin' lake behind the property, and I meant every syllable. He tried to gaslight me, said I was misinterpreting, said I was just helping her, said Madison needed someone stable because her own parents weren't paying attention, and that's when the truth snapped out of me like a whip. I told him I knew about the affair, the secret emails, the hotel receipts, all of it. His jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it, just whispered, "You don't understand what was happening." And that made me laugh, this horrible, humorless sound, because he really believed he could spin this. He tried to move toward me, but I stepped closer first, blocking him completely. And right then, my phone buzzed so aggressively it felt like a drill. My family blowing up the thread because I'd been gone too long and they were probably on their way here, which made Jason's face drain of color. He whispered, "Maya, you're going to ruin everything." And I told him everything was already ruined. The only thing left was whether he walked out of this house in handcuffs or in an ambulance. Madison, still shaking behind me, finally spoke up, voice small but steady. "I want to go home." And that was it, the final crack. Jason knew he'd lost control, and the panic in his eyes was the purest thing I'd ever seen on him. I grabbed Madison's hand, marched her to the car, and when Jason tried to block the door, I shoved him so hard he hit the porch rail, and I didn't feel even an ounce of regret doing it. I got her into the car, locked the doors, and sped off, my pulse shaking through the steering wheel, knowing full well that once we reached the house, the truth would blow open like dynamite, and nothing in our family would ever be the same again. But I had no idea that the moment we walked into that house, someone else was already there, someone who knew more than I expected, and what they said next detonated the real bomb.
By the time we pulled into my brother's driveway, there were already 3 cars lined up like someone had called an emergency town hall meeting. My parents' SUV, Lexi's car parked crooked like she didn't even finish turning the wheel, and a black sedan I didn't recognize until I saw the man leaning against it. At first, I thought it was some neighbor sticking his nose where it didn't belong, but when the porch light hit his face, my stomach flipped. It was Ethan, my ex, still in his jacket, arms crossed, expression sharp as hell, like he didn't just trace a burner phone, but personally planned to drag someone into federal court if necessary. I barely had the car in park before everyone rushed forward. Lexi screaming Madison's name, my mom crying like she'd been holding her breath for an hour, my dad trying to act calm but visibly shaking. But the second I stepped out, the energy shifted, like the air itself realized I knew something none of them did. Madison climbed out slowly, clinging to my arm like she was afraid someone would pull her away, and when Lexi reached for her, Madison actually hesitated, like she wasn't sure who she could trust anymore, and that hesitation alone was enough to make my brother's face crumble. But while everyone was focused on hugging her and crying and touching her face like she'd risen from the dead, my eyes stayed locked on Ethan, who pushed off the car, walked straight toward me, and murmured, "He's on his way here, Maya. He's not running. He's coming to control the narrative." And I swear my blood turned into electrical fire because of how perfectly that matched who Jason always was. A man who believed if he talked first, his version became the truth. I didn't have time to respond because that's when my dad asked the question everyone was too scared to touch until now. Why did she leave that note? Why did she write your name? And the entire porch went silent, painfully, suffocatingly silent, every face turning to me like I was holding the missing puzzle piece in my pocket. I looked at Madison, who looked down at the ground, tears pooling at her feet, and I knew I couldn't just dump the entire truth on her parents with her standing right there, not when she was already on the edge of breaking. So I told everyone to go inside because we needed privacy for what I was about to say, and after a few protests and confused stares, they followed, crowding into the living room like anxious spectators waiting for the drop in a courtroom drama. Madison sat next to Lexi, gripping a pillow like it was a life raft, while Nate paced like a malfunctioning Roomba, muttering, "Who did this? Who was she with? Who scared her?" And it took everything in me not to snap that the answer was standing in the mirror every morning. Everyone kept demanding answers, demanding explanations, but before I could even open my mouth, Ethan cleared his throat, loud, deliberate, and said, "I traced the messages. I know who she was talking to." My brother spun around so fast he nearly tripped over the coffee table and shouted, "Who? Tell me right now!" But Ethan didn't flinch, didn't soften, didn't slip into the emotional chaos swirling around the room. He just looked straight at Lexi, straight at her, and said, "It was Jason." The room didn't explode right away. It fractured quietly first, a few seconds of stunned silence, as the name hung in the air like a dropped bomb that hadn't detonated yet. Lexi blinked, confused, shaking her head like she misheard, while my mom clutched her chest, whispering, "No, no, that can't be. He's family." And my brother let out this low growl, the kind men make right before their world splits in half. When the words finally sunk in, Lexi's face broke, completely broke, like her entire reality had been ripped from under her, and she gasped out, He wouldn't. He loves Madison. But she couldn't finish because her voice cracked like fragile glass. I stepped forward, gently but firmly, and told them everything. How Madison had panicked, how she'd confided in Jason, how he used her vulnerability to isolate her, how he manipulated her with guilt and fear, how he convinced her to sneak out and meet him alone, how he had an entire separate digital trail that led to this exact moment. And I watched the truth hit each of them differently. My mom crying into her hands, my dad staring at the wall like he was trying to process the monster they'd unknowingly welcomed into the family, Nate gripping the back of the couch so tightly his knuckles turned white, and Lexi. God, Lexi. She just sank into the sofa, staring at nothing, whispering, "He promised we were okay. He promised we were okay," over and over, like the words could rewind time. Then my brother, shaking like an earthquake, asked the question I'd been dreading. Did he touch her? Madison flinched so hard it felt like the floor tilted, and I rushed to say, No, Nate. She wasn't hurt physically. She came willingly because he manipulated her, but he intended something that would have destroyed her. Madison broke down again, sobbing into her mother's lap, and that sight alone made my chest cave in. But right then, right when everyone was already unraveling, the front door opened. Heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway, and Jason walked in like he was the one who'd been betrayed. He actually had the audacity to look offended when he saw all of us staring at him like he was diseased. Lexi stood up on shaking legs, eyes swollen, voice barely human as she whispered, "Tell me it's not true." And Jason, smiled. Not wide, not obvious, just this small, arrogant, dismissive curve of his mouth that told me everything I needed to know. He thought he could talk his way out of this. He thought he could gaslight his own wife in front of her entire family. He opened his mouth and began with, "Bibi, they're twisting things," but he didn't get another word out before Nate lunged at him so fast Ethan and my dad had to grab him midair. Jason kept talking, kept spinning his narrative, calling me dramatic, calling Ethan a computer nerd who thinks he's a detective, calling Madison confused, and the more he talked, the more my hands shook, not with fear, but with fury, because I'd been holding on to a nuclear weapon of truth for months, and this was it. The moment I swore I'd never use it unless I absolutely had to. But he forced my hand. He left me no choice. So I reached into my bag, pulled out my tablet, opened the folder named Just In Case, tapped the screen, and projected every screenshot, every email, every hotel charge, every message onto the living room TV. The room fell silent. Not like before, not shocked silence. This was horrified, gut-punched, soul-rotting silence. Jason's face drained of color, his mouth opening and closing like a fish tossed onto concrete. Lexi collapsed into a sob so raw it felt like someone ripped open the floor. Madison buried her face in her knees, and even my father cursed. My father, who never curses. The truth was out, ugly and naked and undeniable. And Jason finally realized, that his kingdom of lies had fallen. And just when I thought the night couldn't get worse, couldn't get darker, couldn't get any more catastrophic, my mom whispered the sentence that froze every artery in my body. This isn't the first time he's done something like this. And with those 9 words, the real story began. One none of us were prepared for, and one that would rip our family open in a way we could never come back from.
I didn't sleep the night before the hearing. Not because I was scared. God, that phase of my life had died months ago. But because the silence finally felt like something I'd earned. My penthouse was still,
The city was humming faint beneath my windows, and I kept replaying the sound of my niece calling me a nobody while my entire family laughed like I was the punchline of their favorite joke. That laugh had been the last time they ever saw me small. Today, they'd see exactly what I had become. My attorney picked me up at 7 sharp, and I walked into that courthouse in a tailored black suit, hair slicked back, makeup sharp enough to slice through excuses. I looked like money. I looked like consequences. And judging from the way my family shrank the moment my heels clicked across the floor, they knew it. My niece, Ava, hid behind her mother, suddenly shy and very much not the loudmouthed princess who declared me irrelevant. My sister-in-law, Marissa, whose favorite hobby was treating me like a charity case, looked like she hadn't slept in a week. My brother, Charles, had lost the smugness he usually wore like cologne. Even my parents looked older, smaller. I should have felt guilty. I didn't. Judge Reynolds called us in. I took my seat across from the people who used my loyalty as a leash for most of my life. Miss Carter, the judge began, we are here today to rule on the temporary hold you placed on Carter Holdings accounts. Before we proceed, is there anything you'd like to present? My lawyer stood. Yes, Your Honor, the forensic accounting reports. All of them. The tension in the courtroom tightened like a noose. And with every page that flipped, every missing dollar traced, every suspicious transfer exposed, my brother's face drained. This is outrageous, he snapped. She's twisting numbers. The judge held up a hand. Mr. Carter, unless you graduated with a degree in forensic finance in the last 48 hours, sit down. He sat hard. My lawyer continued. We also submitted the statements of the offshore accounts Mr. Carter opened under a shell corporation, and the notarized record showing he used Miss Carter's name as a secondary guarantor without her knowledge. Marissa gasped at that part. Guess she hadn't known. The judge shifted his glasses. Mr. Carter, you have quite the situation here. My brother was sweating. Actually sweating. Your Honor, you don't understand. The business was sinking and I needed... You needed, I asked, finally speaking. My voice was calm, too calm. You needed what, Charles? My credit? My identity? My future? He opened and closed his mouth like a dying fish. I thought you'd help. You didn't ask, I said, leaning forward. You stole. He flinched like I'd slapped him. It hit me then, this was the first time in years my words had weight. The judge banged his gavel lightly. Given the evidence, I am granting Miss Carter full executive authority over Carter Holdings until an external board audit is completed. Furthermore, Mr. Carter is barred from accessing company accounts or assets effective immediately. The entire courtroom froze. My mother whispered a broken, "Oh my God." My father put his head in his hands. Ava, who had called me a nobody with the confidence of a child who'd never been corrected, suddenly looked like she understood what that word actually meant. And for once, it didn't apply to me. Charles stood, fists clenched, voice cracking. You're ruining me. I stared him dead in the eye. You ruined yourself. When the gavel fell for the final time, it felt like the end of a decade-long storm. But the end wasn't satisfying. It was heavy and real and quiet. Outside the courthouse, my mother caught my arm. Her voice shook. Why didn't you come to us first? I pulled my arm back, gently but firmly, because I did, for years. You just didn't hear me until now. My father tried next. He looked tired. You didn't have to do this. I did, because none of you protected me when I needed it, and none of you stopped him. He looked away. My niece approached last, the same girl who'd laughed at me, the one who thought being cruel made her powerful. Auntie, she whispered, not bratty, not smug, just scared. Is Dad going to jail? I knelt so we were eye level. I don't know yet, I said. Honestly, But, Ava, words hurt, especially when you think people are beneath you. Her lip trembled. I didn't mean. You did, I said softly. But you're young. Learn from this. Don't grow up thinking cruelty is confidence. She nodded, wiping her face. Her mother pulled her back without thanking me. Typical. My family drifted away one by one, realizing they could no longer orbit a version of me that didn't exist anymore. I stayed standing on those courthouse steps, breathing in the cold air like it was the first real breath I'd taken in years. My lawyer approached. You okay? I will be. For once, it was true. Over the next month, Carter Holdings bloomed. Freed from my brother's ego-driven chaos, I rebuilt what he'd almost destroyed. Employees who had been terrified to speak finally came forward. The company stabilized, numbers corrected, and the board, who had always treated me like background noise, suddenly wanted private meetings, updates, my signature on everything. I didn't get drunk on the power, but I respected it. I used it. I earned it. Meanwhile, my family did exactly what I predicted. They crumbled under pressure. Charles's reputation tanked. Marissa filed for separation. My parents tried to smooth things over socially but couldn't outrun the whispers. They blamed me, then blamed each other, then blamed the world. Not once did they blame the man who caused it. But that wasn't my burden anymore. One evening, after closing a deal that saved 200 jobs, I found myself driving to the old family house. I didn't know why. Maybe closure, maybe curiosity, maybe habit. My father answered the door. He looked at me like he wasn't sure if I was real or a ghost. He said, "We were about to eat dinner. You're welcome to join." My mother appeared behind him, hopeful but terrified. I stepped inside. The house smelled the same, looked the same, but I didn't feel small in it anymore. Dinner was quiet, too quiet. Finally, my mother spoke. "We're proud of you," she said, tears in her eyes. "We should have said it a long time ago." My chest tightened, not with forgiveness, but with release. "Thank you," I said, "but I didn't do this to make you proud." My father cleared his throat. "Why did you?" "Because I deserved better, and no one gives you better unless you take it." They looked down at their plates, not angry, just understanding in the way people understand only after their denial collapses. I finished eating, stood, grabbed my coat. My mother reached for my hand. "Will you come back? Not for the company, for us." The part of me that once would have said yes instantly didn't exist anymore. I said, "Maybe, but right now I'm learning how to live my life without shrinking." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. My father whispered, "We miss you." I said, "You had me. You just didn't see me." I left their house for the last time, not angry, not triumphant, just free. The real justice wasn't that I won. It was that I finally understood my worth didn't depend on my bloodline, their approval, or their ability to recognize value. My justice was peace, stability, identity, power, and finally, self-respect. But the emotional part, the part that still makes my chest ache every time I replay it. A week later, my niece Ava sent me a message, a shaky little voice memo. "Auntie, I told my teacher what I said to you, and she told me I need to apologize properly. I'm sorry I called you a nobody. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what it did. I won't ever say something like that again. I want to be like you when I grow up, someone who doesn't let people walk on them, someone strong." That broke me. Not in a painful way, in a healing one. I texted back, "You can be anything, Ava. Just choose kindness. That's real power." And for the first time in years, I believed every word I said. Never underestimate the person your family calls the weak one. Sometimes we're not weak, just quiet. And once quiet people learn they can roar, no one forgets the sound.